Gathering of the Enoch seminar focuses on John within Judaism, methods and implications. And I'd like to focus these remarks on methodology because I think it is important to remember how we got to where we are in this discussion. Historical critical interpretation has strongly shaped the scholarly conclusion that John is anti-Jewish. By historical critical, I mean the interpretive approaches that aim to describe the history of the production of the text or to identify its author. The attempt to read through the gospel to the world behind the text yields the familiar situation that John is anti-Jewish. For example, source criticism prepared scholars to understand apparent discrepancies in the gospel as evidence of a complex layering of divergent sources. Faced with a group called the Jews in John who sometimes appear to be good, sometimes evil, and sometimes are just mentioned in passing, many scholars concluded that the most negative statements regarding the Jews are the ones that are essentially Johannine. This sets the stage to see the gospel's message as polemic against the Jews. This approach to John often involves a second interpretive strategy, mirror reading. Scholars interpret literary attributes of the gospel as reflections of specific problems in the community that produced the text. Reading this way, scholars identify conflict between Jesus and the Jews or the Pharisees, in John 8 and 9, for example, as representative of antagonism between the Johannine community and the Jewish opponents. There are other examples, of course, that we could list. I review these familiar choices interpreters have made as a reminder that choices are being made. Interpretations are not inevitable, no matter how familiar they have become. They are shaped by decisions made by interpreters who were formed by the ideologies and demands of their own moment in history. As someone who is not a historical critic, but who understands John as a literary product of the late first century, it is actually not that hard to read John alongside other Jewish writings of the Second Temple period and to see similarities. Doing so reminds me that Jewish people of the time disagreed over all kinds of things, sometimes vehemently, but usually without understanding their opponents as having fallen outside of God's covenant. I find this a productive conversation in which to situate the Gospel of John.